Hey guys, happy Saturday. We get to hang out today we're usually here on Friday, so we get a weekend together, which is awesome. Friends and some of my friends and I, we used to do, or we currently do, seed beading Saturday. So I feel like we can kind of call this seed beading Saturday too. And today I have a really awesome necklace to share with you. And it is a combination of seed beads, Czech crystal, and Czech glass. And so that's like combining the three most awesome things together. And I have a special cord to introduce, which is a made in the USA waxed micro-macrame cord. And this is something that I've been really excited about because, like, you guys know, when you get a cord and you love the color, and it comes in three colors. There's a black, a natural, and there's also a white. And so you have all the basics you need. But you guys know how when you get a cord, it doesn't fit your beads all the time. And you might sit there trying to make it work. And then eventually it just takes so long to string something that it becomes, a little bit too difficult to work with. So when this cord came out, I was just super, super excited because it is sized perfectly. So you can get it easily through like a size 8 seed bead. You can get it through the crystal and the Czech glass. And Czech glass has kind of a little bit smaller drills sometimes, especially with things like the table cuts. So this is really cool. So I'm going to show you a cool design. It's really meditative, simple design, a lot of stringing with a really cool way to end your knots. So that's another thing I'm excited to share with you guys. So if we can switch to the mat, Chanel, I can show them more details. Thank you, Chanel. Okay, so here's everything I used. Well, not everything, but most of what I used. And this is the necklace here. And one of the things that I really liked about the cord being the medium that I put this on is how flowy it is. It's really soft and it wears really nicely. And so this is the design we're going to do today. And it starts with some seed beads. And what I used are size 8. And size 8's a good one. You can get 11s on here. It's trickier, but possible. But 8s are easy. So we'll just do some 8s today. And this is the Topaz mix. Now you can use any colors you like. But I grabbed the Topaz because I love the gold next to some of these Czech glass and next to the crystal. It just looked really cool. So I selected out metallic gold from this mix. And I'm using a brand new Czech glass strand that they have on the Michaels wall. And this one is so cute. It has so many different, like, look at the cloudy color on that. I know it's not coming across as brilliantly as it is in my eye right here, but in the shop, trust me, this will stand out to you. It's one of the coolest strands. And I forgot to mention, all the stuff I've used is outlined here. If you're looking for it in the app or online, you can type in the SKU number and it should bring up everything that I'm using here for you to find super easy. And then here's the crystal. Now I've made 2 of these using just these strands. So I still have all this left, but they are longer. Let me show you one really quick. They're actually much longer in the store. I've just used a bunch, so you get a lot more. It's a pretty, you can get many jewelry pieces out of these. And that's, so seed beads, the Czech glass strand, 4 colors of crystal. This is black diamond, Colorado topaz, jet, and this one is called honey. It's almost clear, but it has a beige hue to it. It's really cool. And you'll need, let's see, scissors to cut your cord and some glue. Now the glue is handy because even though it is actually possible to get this cord through and string without doing anything but cutting it kind of at an edge, it's handy to glue your ends, and I'll show you how to do that. If you also want to put a little dab of glue on your knots at the end when we do our finish, that's another way you can make it more secure. So let's dive in. Let's get our beads ready. Also, I wanted to highlight that I did use natural when I made this, but today I'm going to work with black so you can see a lot clearer what I'm trying to show. Oh, and I did forget to show you the findings really quick. The findings that I use on the end are just jump rings and a lobster claw. And those are what I used here. Again, those are in the handout too. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to start with my crystals. And I actually put new crimps on the bottom just so I could keep them together. You need about maybe 5 or so to make the necklace. So I'm just going to lay them out in order here on my mat. And here is the Colorado Topaz. Now, if you're wondering about the pattern, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to follow the pattern that is already here on this strand, but I'm going to space it with seed beads and then introduce crystals in a flow pattern. And so I'll show you what I mean by that as we get going. But I thought, we'll just do the whole thing so you can see start to finish how to make it. All right. And so what I did is I kind of put them in an ombre. So I've got honey, Colorado Topaz, black diamond, and jet. Now, if you wanted to work this with just one strand of colors, you could pick any of those four, any other color you like, and it would be great too. You could do it either way. So the use of 4 colors is just, it's optional and extra for some added interest, but you could see where if you just did one of these crystal colors and followed the same pattern, you would still get a really beautiful necklace. So, but if you like this is exactly what I did. I did an ombre here. And now for the cord. So I've already opened this one. And what I do for my ends, just to make it a little bit easier to string, is I'll open up some glue. Let's take the lid off that. And I borrowed this idea from some folks that do kumihimo. And speaking of kumihimo, this cord for kumihimo, yes, that would be very cool. And we're going to do some of that coming up in some future classes. But one thing I learned from the kumihimo folks is that they will often create a firmer end by just kind of dipping it in their glue. And you need to let this dry for a little while, but not too long. And so that's going to make it a lot easier for you to string your beads. You want to cut 50 inches of this. And so off camera here, I've got, my mat is actually a measuring. So I'm just measuring here 50 inches. And again, I'm using these precision scissors. When you do your cut, try to cut it on an angle like that to make it have a point. And then you just want to dip it in the glue again. I'm doing both sides. So, because at the end of the bracelet, at the end of the necklace, you're going to want to be able to weave this back in. So I only got the point down on that one. Try to get that a little deeper in there. There we go. I think that'll work. All right, so this one I'm gonna set aside and let dry, and I've got one that I did earlier here. It does take just maybe 10-15 minutes or so. And the other cool thing about this glue is I've never had any kind of reaction on my fingers or my skin to touching it like I just did. So it's a, like a really friendly glue. Okay, seed beads, and I'm just going to put this here. I'm just going to dump it all out and just select for the colors that I want from it. And last but not least, I'm going to cut this strand, but I'm going to do it in a way that preserves the way that it is strung, because I'm just going to string it basically exactly like it is. And if you guys have any questions, of course, I know in the intro we already mentioned, but just in case anybody joined recently, we have a PDF class, and everything I'm about to show you, you don't have to memorize it at all. It's all going to be in here. And we like to tell folks that this is kind of like just a memory jogger, because there's no substitute for seeing it. But when you combine seeing it with having some notes done for you like this, it means you can do many of them over a long period of time. And of course, class is recorded and it'll be out Monday or Tuesday, because it's today's Saturday. So I'm not sure. It could be Tuesday, but you'll have this, you'll have the replay, and from there it'll get you there. All right. So I've already cut the strand. It's free, but I'm leaving it on here just so it preserves the order. But the first thing I need to do is string 20 seed beads, and that's just this part right here that we're doing. So let's get these on there. And I usually do it in groups of 5 because I'm somebody who loses count really fast, especially on lives. It's so hard to count on lives. Everybody kind of chuckles about that, but so I just do it in groups of 5 and then I can just check my math that way. And feel free, of course, to change this count. And that's how you can add length to your necklace. And again, I'm just selecting for metallic gold, but you can select for any color you like. Okay, so there's 20. Go ahead and slide that down, but try to leave about a 10-inch tail. And you're going to need that tail to do some of the weaving back down and knotting when we do our clasp at the end. So just about 10 inches, just go ahead and leave that there. All right, and so the pattern that I did for this one was I just strung kind of like a repeat, starting with a Czech glass bead. And then a seed bead. And I'm low on the metallic gold. So what I might do is just kind of experiment with switching to one of those, or I'm going to switch to one of these colors because I've gone through my mix and used up a lot of it. Unless I've got one here. Actually, never mind. I'm sitting in front of a wall of seed beads. Here we go. So I can't use my metallic gold there. Yeah, I removed every single metallic gold from that tube. All right. But you see how easy this is to string once you get your glue on there? It's really easy. All right, so the first crystal color I'm going to grab, I've done one Czech glass bead from my Czech glass strand, and then I did a seed bead. And next I'm going to do a crystal, and then another Czech glass bead. Just bring that down. Czech glass seed bead, sorry. And then one of these. And so see, I'm just following the order. And grabbing a seed bead, crystal, seed bead, back to the strand, back to the seed bead. So that's what we're going to do for the whole thing. And just pick up a seed bead, bring that down. Bring on another Czech glass bead. So this comes out really gorgeous. It doesn't take very long to string it, but it is, it's really relaxing. Sometimes you just need to string. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but sometimes, oh, and I apologize. I messed up my pattern just a little bit. I wanted to put a crystal there. Okay, there's a crystal. And there's the Czech glass bead. There's something about spacing these little drooks with a crystal next to them that it looks really cool, the way it just pops like that. It's so pretty. Okay, so now I need another seed bead. And I'll move on to my next color here. And seed bead. And a crystal. So what I hope is coming across over the camera there is how easy it is to string with this cord. It's just like, it's a dream. And I remember when John Bead sent me the samples of this cord, I basically like just kept asking every week, so is it out yet? So is it out? Because I love it. It's very cool. And we did a, in case anybody hasn't seen it yet, we did a more advanced like Micro-Macrame class. And it was a, not a live one, but a recorded class of a bracelet with some hitch knots and some square knots that had a couple different colors and another check glass strand from the Michaels wall that was used in it. And that's, you can find that on blog.johnbead.com and on our YouTube. And it features all of the products that you can find in Michael's stores. So I'm just going along. I'm doing crystal, seed bead. Then I'm coming back to the flow here of this check glass strand. Look at that table cut. It was so cool. And seed bead. And we'll go back to our crystal. And so I'm going to keep going until I've used all the check glass on this strand. And I might speed up just a little bit. If anyone has any questions about the pattern, it is highlighted in the handout. I've diagrammed out the entire flow here. So you can, if you like it, if you love it as much as I do, you can copy it exactly. And if you want to change it up, I'm hoping it'll also inspire some ideas too. And one thing I could say as I'm just stringing along about the cord, just some more details about it, it's a little sticky. And so when you do a macrame knot, the macrame knot, it doesn't move. It stays right where you put it, which is really awesome. And then something to mention also about the stringing order that I'm using. The reason I kept it in this order, and the kind of the rhyme or reason to creating the strands in this configuration, was when you put them on a necklace and you string them exactly in this order. Let me bring it over here really quick. It kind of serendipitously lines up the two main focals offset from each other, which I thought was neat. So there's the ripple bead and the table cut. And the ripple bead and the table cut, when you wear it, it looks side by side like that. I just thought that was neat. And it puts this one down kind of in the center, which is one of the heavier beads. So when you wear it, it does stay centered pretty easily. Oops, that one is, there we go. And over here, I'm losing some of my tail, and that's no problem. I'm just gonna give my tail back there. Just slide it on. Okay, so I used this crystal, so let's come over here. And we need another one of these. So I'm back to the honey color. And I forgot to mention earlier when we were getting started, there's another strand that is similar. It's the one we used in the macrame video. And I'll show that at the end in case you're finding that this strand is super popular at your store and maybe it's sold out. You can find an alternative strand that also looked very cool in this design. And I'll show that to you before we finish up. But it's another earth tone magic one, which looks very neat. And all these little drooks, I know it's really hard to see, and I apologize for that, but all these little drooks have, if you spin them, they look like they have like, they're little planets, like they have little nebulas in them. They have this kind of like milky, flowy. I just really enjoy them. It's super cool. They look like a sky with clouds. And I used that one, so let's go to Black Diamond. Feel free to give me a shout in the chat if I mess up the pattern. You guys have probably figured the flow here now. There's the next one. And it's, oh, cool. I love this way, the way that this worked out. You get to put a jet crystal right next to that table cut with those colors in it. It's really cool. And I'm looking forward to showing you guys how to finish this because it is something that I think is refreshing because of how easy. And this cord is strong and it does not have a stretch to it. So in case anyone's wondering that, does this stretch? It doesn't. And I've been I did a lot of testing when it was new. And then I've been wearing a lot of the jewelry I made with it, including the macrame bracelet that we did for the video. And it's not stretching at all on me. And so I just got this color. And now I'm going to the Colorado. And almost done, guys. Pretty fast. And here's Black Diamond again. I think this one's one of my favorites. I mean, it's gray. I thought about doing a pink and gray one. That would be a neat little combo. And I would put that with one of the hematite seed beads. Maybe I would switch to the 11-0 for that. That would look really cool. I don't know if you guys are like me, but when I'm stringing, I'm designing other pieces of jewelry while I'm stringing. It's kind of in my head. I think I might really like beads. I don't know. Okay, so there's this one, almost there. Another one of those little planet drukes. I'm still selecting for the metallic gold. And we're back to honey. Square. There's that. Topaz. And the last one is our drupe. Okay, so our necklace is almost done. All I have left to do now, and I'm going to raise up just a little bit so you can see the whole thing laid out. I'm going to move these crystals here. Make sure I still have my 10-inch tail. And then what we'll do is string on the 20 that we need to finish it. So just trying to make it fit. There we go. That's better. Okay. So that is the layout there. My tail side. And what I do before I move on and string those 20 beads is just take a look and make sure that I'm happy with the flow of it, how it all lined up, see if I made any mistakes in my pattern that I was intending. And this is what I was hoping to do. And these little confidence markers are here. And then the little offset. And then the main focal here. So what I'm going to do here is finish the end. I'm going to need some more gold. And just really quickly throw another 20 on there.
Danielle?
Yeah.
May I ask you, while you're doing that, what is the length of the necklace at this point?
Right now?
Yeah.
So I don't have the rest of the seed beads on yet, but at the moment, it is coming up on 16 inches.
So if somebody wanted to make it 20, what would be your recommendation? More seed beads?
Yeah. So, well, let me tell you the length without the seed bead part. So that way we can math how much seed beads. So we're looking at 14 inches exactly. If you just did that. So let's just pretend those seed beads aren't on there. This to here is 14 inches.
Thank you.
Yeah, any additional length you'd like, add it here with your seed beads. 20 is going to give you 20 gives you 1.75 inches. So 25 will give you a good 2 inches. So every 2 inches you'd like to add 25, or you can kind of divide that by each side. And you'll want to match the quantity that you put on the starter side with the finishing side. I mean, if you want to, just for symmetry, but yeah. And if you even wanted to, you could do a little pattern up here with, you know, maybe continue. There's just the crystals. You could get another strand of Czech glass if you wanted. Maybe something 3mm would be cute, spaced out every 5. I think that would look really neat. And then there's always extender chain. I ended mine with just a jump ring, but there's no reason you couldn't put a little chain on that. So there's 10, and let's just get 10 more. Okay. There's 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So I'm going to just scrape those up here so they're not in our way. And we're ready to finish. So finishing this is, I hope that you will like take this to the next level with your designs, because it's something that is, it's really easy to do. And it also, I think it gives you some freedom for how to string stuff in the future, knowing that you can do this kind of back knot thing. So if it's new to anybody, this is going to be cool. You'll like this. If you've seen this before, then just, you know, stick with us. But I'm going to string on one more seed bead, and I switched the color just for, you know, to make it look cool. But essentially what we're going to do, let me show you the finished one, is we're going to bring on a seed bead and use it as our link for the jump ring. I'll put the jump ring on at the end, but I'm going to bring the cord through the seed bead and then just bring it back down through the beads and do a series of hitch knots. And what I do is a double hitch knot, and I'll show you all that. The double hitch knot is cool because it's too big to flow back through the bead for the size 8 seed bead. But it kind of, you don't really see it. I can show you where they are if I really look, but they don't, because this cord is so soft. Like you can see, I've got one right here. It kind of makes these 2 seed beads stay together because I put glue on it, but it doesn't affect your flow. And you've got a hidden knot, and you don't have to, you know, go all the way back around and, you know, do all that. So very cool. So here's the seed bead. We'll do this side first, and we'll go back and finish the other side. So you'll get to see this twice. Seed bead on there. And let's just work through a few beads, as many as we can get through. Go through like, I don't know. It's like I got through 6 beads there. And on the first side that you do this, it's easier because you can do all of this back adjustment from the other side to make it tighter. So the second side's a little trickier to finish, but we have a couple tips for that too. So I'm pinching the seed bead and just pulling just to get it to sit right there. Okay, so just kind of lay it out. Bring your cord up like this to form a loop and floss it in between the seed bead you're coming out of and the one that's next. Just floss it in between those two. And I'm working over the cords right now, meaning I brought my loop over the top. So I want to come around. Sorry, let's make that stay there. I want to come around from underneath it now and go up through that loop. So let's do that really quick. And if it doesn't stay in between the beads you want it to, go ahead and keep going with your loop. And then just right when it gets there, just make sure it kind of stays in the middle. The one you're coming out and the next one in the row. So there's the first half. And so that knot is good. It's a nice tight knot, but it's not going to be big enough to for sure not slide back up through your bead, and you would get maybe some gapping here. So what I do is I repeat that one more time, but this time I'll go the other direction. So remember how we brought it above? I'm going to go below this time. But again, I'm staying in between those 2 beads. I'm just flossing in between those 2. There's my loop. This time it's easy. I can come up over the front, the beads, go through the loop, tight. And the second knot tends to sit a little easier. And there we go. So you can see where that knot's really not going to move anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 things. I'm going to weave down through a few more beads, but I'm not losing sight of where that knot is yet. I just want to go through a few. as many as I can get through and exit from, whichever one it pops out of. And if you pull down like this to give yourself some tension, it can help. So I'm having a little trouble there. There we go. Okay. But right before I pull that through, I'm going to do something with glue. And you remember when we had our card and had this cool little, the thing we strung it on? This is a really strong fishing line. It's a pretty big diameter. Get your glue out. And you can use this as a little applicator for your glue. So I'm going to sploosh some onto it. Be careful because it gushes a little bit. So let's just sploosh a little bit on there. So I got a little dot. And I'm going to come over here. My knot is still highlighted. Just going to bend that there. Let's get a little glue on it. Not a ton. I'm trying not to get it on my seed bead. But if you do, you can just rub it off. This glue is designed to stick to fabric. So I think it's easy to kind of like get it off surfaces. All right, and now go ahead and pull that loop through. There you go. So you would want to let that dry before you wear it. You could trim it now, or you could repeat that one more time. And on my samples, especially if this was something I was going to sell, I would go ahead and do it one more time. I would leave down. So we've got plenty of time, so let's do it. It's probably good to see it again, I think. So you'll end up doing this a total of 4 times, twice on each side. And you could do more if you want. It depends how much thread you got left and how you're feeling about how strong it is. Let's go down through a few more. And again, the first side is easier because you have the ability to slide the beads down. Okay, so there's that. All right, so I think I'm going to go down through all of them and maybe put my knot above the Czech Clasp bead this time. There's one more. But I wonder if one of the reasons I chose this project was I wanted to show multiple passes through an 8/0 bead with no needle. And I don't know if the wow factor is coming over in my voice or not, but it's like every time I do this, I'm still pinching myself because this is not something I used to be able to do with other cords that I used to use. So here's another hitch knot. Exiting from that last 8/0 seed bead done right in front of my droop. That's just the random spot I chose. I thought it'd be easier to floss here. And that's something I might do on this side when it's really tight. So this time I'm passing over. So I brought the cord over. And then here's underneath the beads. Up through the loop. And again, this is just a hitch knot. A lot of you guys will recognize this from our seed beading. This is what we do on seed beading. So there's the first half. And this time I'm going to make my loop by going underneath. Just flossing between those there. And let's come up and over this time. Just help it stay in between the beads you want it to. And pull really tight there. Get that through the next bead. I string it through the next bead before putting the glue on because if you didn't do that, you'd be trying to do this step next to the glue that's on that knot, and at that point you'd have more wet glue on the part you're trying to maneuver, and then it would maybe stick inside the bead as you're trying to push it through. So I just found it easier to do it that way. So let's do our little trick again. Let's get a little more glue on here. And you can use a needle too for this. I'm just using the end of one of these because you can just toss this and use a new one next time versus a needle. You'd have to rub it off or clean it, or sometimes they get all stuck. So there's my glue. And just give that a little sploosh there. Okay, pull that through and get that in there. So that knot actually popped into my drook, and that's a win too. I'm okay with that. Okay, so we can trim this now. I might go down through maybe one more bead. Why not? Give it a little space from where I'm gonna have glue. And let's trim it. So with your scissors, just push down and pull up. And that should kind of pop in there. So now for the other side, and this is only going to be trickier than this side just because we're trying to keep it tight now, whereas before we could slide this around. So now we got to work. It's doable. It's just a little trickier. So for starters, just kind of give yourself some gravity. Off camera here, I'm lifting it to making sure that it's, you know, tight. And you don't have to go too crazy with making it tight because you do want it to flow, but it's not like beading wire where making it too cinched up will really make it not flowy. It's still flowy even if you really over cinch it, but there's no need to. And here's another root beer seed bead. I'm calling these root beer. They're a part of the Topaz mix. Slide that down. And let's get back through some beads. That'll probably do it right there. Okay. So I'm going to pinch that seed bead, pull down, and just get it to be pretty tight there. Let's do our floss thing again. And then underneath and up through our loop here. And I'm just making sure that I stay between the bead that I want to be below the bead I'm exiting. Otherwise I'll get a loop over a bead, which I don't want. Okay, so there's the first half of that hitch knot. Second half, we'll just bring it under. And then we can go back over the beads. Tighten that there. I want to get down just through more than one. You want to get down through at least 3. And this is tighter, so it's a little tougher. I still have a good amount of glue on my last one here, so I'm not going to apply more. I think this one will do. It's a little dry. Let's see. Yeah, it's going to work. Okay. I'm going to pull that tight. All right. And so I'm just going to do this once more. And I'll go super slow. I know unless you've seen hitch knots a lot, it's kind of hard to visualize it. But if there's any questions, let me know. And just, it's a little trickier to weave down on this side because it's really tight. One thing that I also tested, and I could have used today, but I decided I just really wanted to show how easy this is without, but you can use a collapsible eye needle and it'll fit through a size 8 seed bead. So if this is kind of just a little bit too much to do, you can absolutely grab one of those. You probably have one already. There's 2 kinds of those. There's a hard one and one that's braided. I think the harder one might be the better choice because the braided one, you know how the tip of that braided one kind of has a fraying potential if you're using cord next to it. Almost there. I might actually trim this. Let's do that really quick. Either I got a little glue on it or I didn't do a good job gluing in the beginning. So there we go. Or there's something about that bead that's a little different. But I want to get down through at least a few more. There we go. It's a teeny bead. Ah, there we go. Okay. All right, one more hitch knot and we'll call it good. So I'm going to go around, sorry, over the top. and then underneath it. And then up through there. And then we'll go over, make our loop go over the spot here. And, or sorry, under. We did over first. I always get that mixed up. I think it would still work, but this is stronger, I think. Because you have a hat. You know those hat knots you get when you do a hitch knot. So you'll have a little hat under there, which is big. And that's why it doesn't slide back up through the bead. Okay. I want to get through one or two more and then we'll trim it. If I can. All right. And so I was going to tell you guys another idea I had about this cord. In addition to Kumihimo. There we go. I got through the bead. But because it can go through seed beads, and 8/0, absolutely, you could get multiple passes. 6/0, you could definitely do that. And so one of the thoughts that I kept having was, what if we did some bead weaving with this thread? Now, disclaimer, I've already done it, so I know it works. I did some herringbone with it and some right angle weave. And so one of the things I was wondering is if you guys would be interested in trying that. Now, I probably would use a needle for that. So we'll probably be looking at one of those big eye needles. But I think it would work. I think it would be really fun. So there's, I had a little more trouble on this side than I did on the first side, but we made it. We got there. And so now you have your necklace ready. Here's the fun part, putting the jump rings on. And let me show you the jump rings I'm using are 5mm. And they are from the 18 karat gold plated line. Feel free to use any of the finishes that you like. You can use the stainless. The cool thing about these is they are about 22 gauge. And so the awesome thing about that is they fit inside of a seed bead. So that's the only really requirement is that. And if you didn't have a jump ring that fit, well, something that I've seen other designers do is they pick up a set of wire, like 24 gauge or 22 gauge, and they'll just do a wire wrap through it. But what I'm going to do is grab some square nose pliers and some bent nose pliers to help me do my jump rings. And you can do your jump rings however you like to do them. And I'm just going to find the seam on that. Where is that? Open that up. And it should go right through the seed bead. And I'm going to close this side. This will be the side that I click it to. There's that one. And now I need one of my lobster claws here. And these are again the 18 karat gold, the 12mm lobster claws. Put that on. And once again, everything I'm using right here is in the handout with the Michael's app SKUs that you can just type in and it'll all come up for you. So there they are. The seed bead is linked there with a jump ring. On the other side, I just put a jump ring. You could put a chain if you want to. And there you go. There's your necklace. And so you could really use any color cord you want. It doesn't dramatically show through. The place where I notice it is on the transparent bead. So these beads are transparent and these are. So these look a little darker. You can see that there's some black cord in there. And then this one, they look almost translucent because I used the natural. But it's super subtle. So any color cord is going to work great. So that's the design for today. We have about 14 minutes left of class time that we can answer any questions you guys have about crystal, seed beads, new strands. I can show you the other strand. That's actually a great idea. Let's start with that. And the cord, of course. So let me bring that back out so you can get a good look at it. But another strand that might work is we have a, what is this called? This one, I can't remember what we named this one. It's, I think it's, well, it has 3 table cuts. So the original, I have another one here that I can
Danielle, it's
Yeah.
called Autumn Green.
Autumn green. Thank you so much. So the autumn green one is, and I should, there we go. Has 3 table cuts, whereas this one just has the 2. Oh, sorry guys, I'm off camera. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. So 3 table cuts come on this one. This one just has the 2, but they're very similar in color. This one has a lot more gray and blue going on. This one has more earth tone brown, but you still get little hints of the gray in there. So you could make the colors work interchangeably between both of these strands if you wanted to integrate them, match them up. These colors here are true olive, and they're very bright. When I hear you're getting lots of just true gray and blue, especially in those droops. There's little hints of blue in there. But these strands complement each other so nicely that I feel like they're going to be perfect, and you could do a lot with them. The bracelet we did, in case anyone wants to see that, I do still have that next to me. And the cord used, I used a mix of the black and the natural. And I just did a little macrame. And it comes out so cool. Those little tiny knots, they just stay right where you put them. You don't even have to try very hard. You just they lock right onto the bead. And so that video is available if you want to check that out. What else am I forgetting? Oh, well, I could show you the next upcoming classes that we have that are already on the website. And if there's any questions, just shout them out. And so let's see, got next week. So next week we're going to do, it's actually on beading wire, because I just wanted to show, you know, all the different mediums and how cool the crystals work. But I grabbed one of those multi-packs of pearls. Have you guys seen them on the stringing wall where they have 4 different sizes? It's 4mm up to 10. Yeah. So I see Jennifer's nodding. So this one is using that. And of course, as always, everything is shown here. And you can get, oh, and I got a question the other day I wanted to actually mention. A lot of folks aren't spotting, these are on the place where you sign up. So if you want to get it early, you don't have to wait till class to get it. You can actually get this the day you sign up. It's on the registration page. If you just kind of scroll down, it's situated just above where you can build a cart with materials and just below all the class info. So there's like a little hyperlinked blue hyperlink, and you click on that and it will bring you to the PDF you can download. And so next week, we're going to do that with a bunch of crystal colors. And I did a rainbow, and I used all the AB finishes. So here's the bracelet. So it's a really similar clasp, but just with beading wire and a different medium and a different stringing pattern. But I thought we'd just talk about pearls and crystal. It uses stainless, and we'll go into some detail about crimping. Crimping is something that is not, it's not hard, but there's some tricks to it, right? And there's a lot of really great classes out there on crimping, but we've never done one. So I thought we'll do one there. And that way you'll have all of the tools in your tool basket for how to use beautiful crystals. So that's that one. And then at this point, you guys are like, hey, some bead weaving, please, right? So I got you. Let me get this one up here. This is a different colorway for the crystal crown bracelet. The one that you see on the website is pink and sapphire. So that was the original. And then when I was doing these, I was working with like the crystals for the first time. And so I just used like a bunch of colors so I could see how they all looked. This one is tanzanite with AB, you know, clear. And this is a more advanced bead weaving pattern. But please come, don't be afraid to try it, even if you're new, because you can always pick up little tidbits just watching and seeing how it's done. But it's a combination of right angle weave and then just some square and just a side embellishment. The crystals here, of course, you can get the handout, download it. It'll have everything I used in the sapphire and rose colorway. But these sizes are 6mm round, 4mm bicone, and the seed beads are an 11-0. And so that's that one. And then last but not least, we have And I want to show you 2 more strands that we got in the store that are so cool. These are so fun. This is a super beginner friendly brick stitch earring / fringe earring. If you've never done a brick stitch fringe, this is the class, because we're going to do it with 8O beads and they're easier to see. And I might work with a turquoise color that day so you can see a little brighter, because this is a translucent aqua and I mixed it with delicas. So those are little delicas in there, kind of hidden to make the fringe flow. And those strands, if you're seeing these beautiful squares there and the drops, those are these. So the squares are a 2-hole Czech glass bead that has a like kind of a reflective side, and this is going to be used in a lot of classes. This one only uses some of the strand, but this one is so cool for a lot of bead weaving designs. Having a 2-hole bead, it just kind of opens a lot of doors for us for teaching and ideas. So that's used in this one. And then here's the drops. It's like a party. It's like, wow. And how cool would these be? The first time I saw these, I thought like Frida Kahlo designs, because those are the colors that I would often associate with her kind of work. And they're just bright and they're bold and they're fantastic. And so we'll do some really cool stuff with these. This is just the first thing that I came up with, but there's going to be a lot more. And yeah, and that's what I have on the website currently. I think that pretty soon there'll be a few more. And like I was saying earlier, I was considering, if you guys are into it, maybe bead weaving a little bit with the cord, because it's strong and it will give you a lot of structure in a stitch. So I thought I'd play with that. It's kind of neat. It's neat to see, but it's I wouldn't call it advanced, but it's a little bit kind of out there, right? So let me know if you like that. And then we have, I wanted to mention something I'm working on. I don't have it to show you, unfortunately, because I haven't finished it, but I'm working on a design with our flatbacks and our good felt. So I'm going to show you guys that stuff. So these 3 things, these are all in Michael's now. If you haven't seen the flatback wall, it's insanely great. It's really cool. And we have a class coming up with Kelly DeFries, the Crystal Ninja. That is also, I think it's our 3rd class in September. Definitely tune in for that, because she's going to do something epic in home decor with these crystals. So awesome to see. I already have something in mind for Halloween. It's going to be a bead embroidery with these kind of like glued down, and then we'll stitch a border on it. So if you're in the store and you're looking way ahead, like October, grab those in any color and any size, because I'm going to make it work for whatever you want for this selection here. And then this is the best for fringe. So it works so good. It like flows. It's great for 11O seed beads, 10O seed beads. You can get this into a size 12 or a size 10 beading needle. And then the felt is the best mix of like soft and firm. I'll probably work with black for Halloween, but it comes with 4 shades. You get white and black. Yeah, so what else can I show you guys from the wall? I think that's pretty much everything. If you haven't been into your store, definitely go in, check out the crystal wall. It's amazing. There's a lot of new crystal colors, like at least 24 new colors in some cases for some of the sizes. They go all the way up to the really big sizes now. There's 8mm crystal, all made in Czech Republic. Yeah, and so I think I'll just check in with Carmi, see is there anything I'm forgetting to mention or any questions I missed.
No, Danielle, your regulars are all here today and sending you lots of thank yous for yet another great class. And we have some new people that will hopefully join us for classes to come. So thank you.
Oh, yay. Welcome to the new people. I hope you will love beading as much as we do. It's really fun. Yeah. So, yeah, in that case, unless there's any more questions for me, I guess I'll just let you guys get to your Saturday. And of course, if you make something beautiful, post it, and we love seeing it. So the best way to get us to see it is to tag hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag John Bead, and we'll be sure to share. We love to share your work. So whenever we see your posts, we always put them on our story or something like that. I'm always looking. We have a Facebook group that you can find. The best way to find it is go to blog.johnbead.com and join the Facebook group there. And we love seeing all of your Michael's creations that you do with our beads, and any of your designs that you come up with. Also, great place to give me tips. I'm always out there listening for, hey, I want to learn this, or I have a question about that. That's a great place to do that too. All right. So have a great weekend, you guys. Happy reading, and have a great rest of your Saturday.